Captain Doyon Park stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Infinite Horizon and watched the alien ships approach. They were beautiful, nothing like the warships from Earth's movies. These vessels glowed with soft blue light and moved through space like dancers. For 3 months, his crew had been sending peaceful signals into deep space. Now, finally, someone had answered. The alien who appeared on their screen was unlike anything Doyon had imagined. It looked like a being made of living crystal, with light pulsing through its body in patterns that seemed to communicate emotion. When it spoke, the translation device struggled for a moment before finding the right words. "Greetings, travelers from Earth. I am Thraxis of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your world with great interest. You have reached the stars peacefully. This is good. We welcome you." Doyon felt his heart race with excitement. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Behind him, his crew worked quietly, recording every moment of this historic meeting. Engineer Unichoi monitored the aliens' transmission, making sure they captured every detail of the technology being used. This was bigger than any discovery in human history. The Galactic Council, Thraxis explained, was an alliance of 12 different alien species. They had been working together for over 3,000 years, sharing knowledge and resources. They explored the galaxy together, helped each other grow, and solved their problems through talking and trade. War was something they had left behind long ago, a dark part of their past that civilized beings no longer needed. For the next 2 years, humanity became the newest student of the galactic community. Earth was given probationary membership, which meant humans could learn and trade but needed to prove themselves worthy of full membership. Doyen became Earth's main representative. Spending months at a time on Council space stations, learning about alien cultures and sharing stories about humanity, Yuna led a team of Earth's best engineers to study alien technology. The Council shared their knowledge freely, showing humans how to improve their engines, develop better energy sources, and build stronger materials. What would have taken humanity centuries to discover on their own, they learned in months. It felt like a dream come true. Diplomat Hannah Kim worked tirelessly to build relationships with each Council species. She learned their customs, understood their values, and helped create trade agreements that benefited Earth and the Council. Some aliens were curious about humans, asking endless questions about Earth's diverse cultures, music, and food. Others were more reserved, watching humanity carefully to see if these newcomers could truly embrace peace. Everything seemed perfect. Humanity was learning, growing, and becoming part of something larger than themselves. Children on Earth studied alien languages in school. Scientists collaborated with alien researchers on projects that expanded understanding for everyone. Artists from different worlds shared their work, creating beauty that celebrated the diversity of life in the universe. Then the distress signals started arriving. At first, it was just one Council world going silent. This had happened before, usually because of technical problems or solar storms that disrupted communications. But when the Council sent a ship to investigate, they found nothing. The entire planet had been stripped of life. Cities were gone. Forests had vanished. Even the oceans had been drained. All that remained was bare rock. Within weeks, 3 more worlds suffered the same fate. The Council called an emergency meeting, and for the first time, Doyon saw fear on the faces of his alien friends. Thraxis's crystal body pulsed with dark red light, a color Doyon had learned meant deep distress. "The Vrek swarm has come to our sector," Thraxis announced to the gathered representatives. "They are a species unlike any in the Council. They do not talk. They do not trade. They consume entire worlds for biomass, taking everything and leaving nothing behind." The Council had encountered the Vreks before, hundreds of years ago at the edge of their territory. Back then, the Vreks had been stopped by the sheer size of Council space. The swarm had simply moved in a different direction, seeking easier prey. But now they had returned, and they were heading straight for the heart of Council territory. Doyon listened as the Council discussed their response. They talked about evacuation plans, how many ships they would need to move billions of people to safety. They discussed setting up defensive shields around their worlds, hoping the Vreks might simply pass by if the planets looked too difficult to consume. Some suggested trying to communicate with the Vrex to find out what they wanted and see if a peaceful solution existed. What about fighting back? Doyan asked during a pause in the discussion. The chamber fell silent. Every alien representative turned to look at him. Thraxis's colors shifted to something between confusion and concern. Fighting? The crystalline being repeated slowly. Captain Doyan, we do not have a military force. We are a civilization of peace. War is not something we practice. Doyan felt his stomach sink. He looked around the chamber at these advanced beings, these aliens who could travel between stars and manipulate energy in ways humans barely understood. They had technology that seemed like magic, knowledge that spanned thousands of years, and wisdom from a dozen different species. But they had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They had no idea how to fight a war. You have no military at all? Yuna asked through the communication link, her voice showing the same disbelief Dojan felt. No defense force? No battle strategies? We have security personnel for maintaining order, another council member explained. But organized warfare? That is something our civilizations abandoned millennia ago. It is inefficient, destructive, and beneath civilized beings. Doyan shared a look with Hannah through the video screen. They both understood what this meant. The Vex had already destroyed 4 council worlds. 14 more planets were in the swarm's path. Billions of innocent lives were at risk, and the most advanced civilization in the galaxy had no idea how to defend itself. Then perhaps Doyan said carefully, humanity can help. We may not have your technology or your knowledge, but we know something you've forgotten. We know how to fight. Commander Ginwoo Han arrived at the council station 3 days after the emergency meeting. He brought with him a team of military strategists, tactical officers, and historians. When he entered the Grand Council chamber, the aliens watched him with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They needed help, but they were not sure they wanted the kind of help humanity was offering. Jinwoo was a career soldier, a man who had spent 30 years in Earth's United Defense Force. He had fought in conflicts on 3 continents, commanded peacekeeping missions, and trained some of Earth's finest soldiers. He understood war in a way the Council could not. When Doyan briefed him about the Council's situation, Jinwoo's response had been simple and direct. They were going to die unless they learned to fight back. The Council chamber, filled with representatives from all 12 species. Thraxis called the meeting to order, his crystal body glowing with nervous energy. Beside Jinwoo stood Tactical Officer Sumin Lee, a young woman who had graduated top of her class in military strategy. She had spent the entire journey to the Council station studying everything they knew about the Vrex. Honorable Council members, Jinwoo began, his voice calm and professional. Thank you for allowing us to present our proposal. I understand that what we are about to show you will be difficult to watch. But you need to understand what humanity can offer. Sumin activated the holographic display. Images filled the center of the chamber, showing scenes from Earth's history. Ancient armies clashing with swords and shields. Medieval castles under siege. Ships firing cannons across ocean waters. Planes dropping bombs from the sky. Tanks rolling across battlefields. The images moved through thousands of years of human warfare. Each era showing more sophisticated methods of fighting. The alien delegates watched in growing horror. Some turned away from the images. Others made sounds of distress in their native languages. A representative from the Lumina species, beings who communicated partly through emotional energy, actually began to weep. They could feel the pain and death in those historical images. You're showing us murder, one delegate said, his voice shaking. Mass murder. How can you display such things with pride? We do not display them with pride, Jinwoo replied quietly. We show them so you understand the truth. Humanity has been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We have fought over land, resources, beliefs, and power. We have made terrible mistakes. Millions of our own people have died in conflicts we wish had never happened. He paused, letting his words settle in the chamber. But through all that pain and loss, we learned something. We learned how to fight. We learned strategy, tactics, and the hard mathematics of warfare. While your species evolved past violence, we refined it. We became very, very good at it. Admiral Taeyong Kwan, who who had joined the presentation through a communication link from Earth, took over the briefing. He was an older man, his hair gray, but his eyes sharp with intelligence. He had commanded fleets during the resource wars and knew exactly what humanity was capable of. The Vrex swarm operates on predictable patterns, Taeyong explained, as Sumin brought up new data. They move from system to system, consuming everything biological. They are efficient, but not creative. They have never faced serious resistance because most species in this galaxy think like you do. They evacuate and hope the swarm moves on. What would you suggest instead? Thraxis asked, though his color showed he was not sure he wanted to hear the answer. We fight them where they are weakest, Sumin said, highlighting points on the holographic map. We do not meet them head-on, where they expect resistance. We use ambush tactics. We target their supply lines. We make them pay for every kilometer they advance. We hit them, retreat, and hit them again until they decide our territory is too expensive to conquer. Another delegate spoke up, his tentacles waving in agitation. What you describe sounds like the tactics of prey animals trying to annoy a predator. The Verks will not simply give up because we inconvenience them. You are right, Jinwoo agreed. Harassment alone will not stop them. That is why we also propose direct engagement at strategic locations. We will need to destroy enough of their forces that continuing the attack becomes mathematically impossible for them. Destroy? The word seemed to physically hurt some of the delegates to say. You mean kill them? Yes, Jinwoo said simply. The Vreks have killed billions of your people. They will kill billions more if we let them. To stop them, we must destroy their ships and kill their swarm creatures. There is no gentle way to say this. War is not gentle. For 6 hours, the human military team presented their battle plan. They showed the council how to retrofit their ships with weapons. They explained the concept of acceptable losses. The idea that some of their own forces would die, but the sacrifice would save many more. They talked about strategic retreats, diversionary tactics, the importance of maintaining supply lines. The council listened with increasing distress. Councillor Vexari, a being whose species communicated through telepathy and valued all forms of consciousness, spoke with barely controlled emotion. What you propose is organized death. You speak of sacrifice as if lives are simply numbers on a chart. You talk about killing thousands of Vreks as if it means nothing. It means everything, Sumin replied, her voice steady. Every death is a tragedy. Every soldier we lose leaves behind family and friends who will mourn them. But if we do nothing, the Vreks will kill everyone on 14 council worlds. Can you tell me which is the greater tragedy? Fighting and losing thousands, or refusing to fight and losing billions? The debate continued for hours more. Some council members argued that violence was never the answer, that becoming warriors would make them no better than the Vreks. Others pointed out that the Vreks were already at their doorstep and philosophical. Debates would not save their people, Hannah, who had spent 2 years building relationships with these species, made an emotional plea. I know this goes against everything your civilizations believe in. I know it feels wrong. But please understand that humanity is offering you a choice you do not currently have. Right now, your only option is to run or die. We are offering you a third option. Fight and survive. Finally, Thraxis called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as each species cast their decision. The holographic display showed the count rising slowly. Some species voted yes immediately. Others abstained, unable to bring themselves to approve of warfare, but also unable to condemn their fellow council members to death. When the final count appeared, the chamber erupted in a mixture of relief and grief. The vote had passed by the narrowest margin in council history. Humanity would be given tactical command of the defense forces. They would have the authority to train council members in combat, retrofit ships with weapons, and plan the defense of threatened worlds. But for council species refused to participate. They chose to evacuate their people rather than be associated with military action. Their ships began leaving within hours, carrying billions of refugees to the outer colonies. As the chamber emptied, Thraxis approached Jinwoo privately. The crystal bean's color was a deep purple, something Jinwoo had learned meant profound sadness. Commander, I hope your species understands what you have begun here today. War has a way of changing those who wage it. We abandoned violence because we saw what it did to us. I fear you may be taking us back down a dark path. Jinwoo met the alien's gaze without flinching. With respect, Thraxis, you did not abandon violence. You simply had the luxury of forgetting it because no one threatened you for 3,000 years. Humanity never had that luxury. We have always had enemies. We have always had to fight. You are not learning something new. You are remembering something you chose to forget, turned to leave but paused at the door. And for what it is worth, we have not forgotten why we fight. We do not fight because we love war. We fight because we love what war protects. Remember that when you watch us in battle. The Kronos Gate was a natural choke point in space, a region where gravitational forces from nearby stars created a narrow passage between star systems. Any fleet traveling from the outer rim to the Council's core worlds had to pass through it. This made it the perfect place for humanity's first stand against the Verk swarm fleet. Captain Minho Song stood on the bridge of the flagship Righteousness and watched his fleet take positions. 200 ships formed a defensive line across the gate. Most were Council vessels that Yuna and her engineering teams had spent 3 weeks retrofitting with human weapons. The aliens had been shocked by how primitive human weapons were compared to their elegant energy systems. Railguns that threw chunks of metal at incredible speeds, missile pods filled with explosive warheads, even simple kinetic barriers instead of sophisticated shield technology. Primitive, but effective, Yuna had told them. Your energy weapons are beautiful, but they take time to recharge. Our weapons are simple. Point and shoot. Reload and shoot again. In a real battle, simple and fast beats elegant and slow. The Council crews had learned quickly. Minho had been impressed by how adaptable they were once they committed to learning. The Keldari, with their multiple limbs, made excellent gunners. The crystalline Thraxians could process targeting data faster than human computers. Even the gentle Lumina, despite their initial resistance, had proven capable of operating weapon systems when they understood lives depended on it. Behind the defensive line, transport ships waited to evacuate civilians from the 5 worlds the gate protected. 12 billion people lived on those planets. If the human strategy failed, if the Vrex broke through, all of them would die. It was a weight Minho felt every moment. Commander Ginwoo reports that boarding teams are ready, Sumin said from her tactical station. She had been assigned to coordinate the overall battle strategy while Minho handled the fleet movements. He wants to confirm you understand how dangerous his plan is, Minho smiled grimly. Tell him I understand perfectly. Tell him we will give him the opening he needs. In the Council observation station, positioned safely behind the battle line, representatives from every Council species watched the preparations. They had spent weeks arguing about whether this plan was too aggressive, too violent, too risky. In the end, desperation had won over philosophy. The Vrex had destroyed 6 more worlds while they debated. 17 planets were now lifeless rocks, and the swarm showed no signs of slowing. Thraxis stood among the observers, his crystal body pulsing with anxiety. He had watched the human military drills and found them terrifying. Soldiers charging at each other with weapons, training to hurt and kill with maximum efficiency. War songs that celebrated death and sacrifice. Commanders who spoke casually about acceptable casualty rates. Everything about human military culture disturbed him. The sensor operator announced the arrival of the Vrex swarm before anyone could see them. The readings were overwhelming. Thousands of bioships, each one a living organism grown specifically for war. They moved through space like a school of predatory fish, coordinated by the hive mind that controlled the entire swarm. When the Vrex ships came into visual range, even the human crews fell silent. The bioships were massive, organic vessels that looked like they had been pulled from nightmares. They pulsed with internal light, their surfaces covered in what looked like scales or armor plates. Some had tentacles that stretched 4 kilometers. Others had massive maws that could swallow smaller ships whole. All ships, battle stations, Minho commanded, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Remember your training. Stay in formation. Fire on designated targets only. Do not waste ammunition on ships that are already dying. The Vrek swarm did not slow down or attempt to communicate. They simply charged forward, expecting the same response they had always received. Prey that ran, or prey that hid behind shields. They were not prepared for what humanity had taught the Council. All ships, open fire, Minho ordered. 200 ships unleashed everything they had. Railgun rounds tore through space at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles streaked toward their targets, each one carrying enough explosive power to crack a small moon. Energy weapons, the few that the Council had kept, added their own deadly light to the barrage. The front line of the Vrek swarm simply ceased to exist. Hundreds of bioships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The aliens watching from the observation station made sounds of horror and amazement. They had never seen destruction on this scale, but the Vrek swarm numbered in the thousands. The loss of a few hundred ships meant nothing to the hive mind. The swarm kept coming, closing the distance rapidly. Phase 2, Minho announced calmly. Ramming teams, you are authorized. This was the part of the plan that had made several council members physically ill when they heard it. 20 ships, crewed by volunteers, broke formation and accelerated directly toward the swarm. These ships had been loaded with every explosive the engineering teams could fit inside them. Their crews had no intention of returning. The Council observers watched in horror. As the suicide ships crashed into the largest Vrks bioships, the explosions were blinding, each one destroying not just the target, but dozens of nearby enemies. 20 human ships, and the few alien volunteers who had accepted this mission, ceased to exist in moments. But they took over 300 Vreks vessels with them. All ships concentrated fire on the gap, Sumin commanded, her voice steady, despite what she had just witnessed. Do not let them close the hole. The remaining fleet poured fire into the opening the suicide ships had created. More Vreks died, their bioships torn apart by the sustained barrage. But they were adapting now, spreading out to make themselves harder targets. Commander Jinwoo, you have your opening, Minho announced. Go now. From behind the fleet, small fast tack craft shot forward. These were human design, built for speed and maneuverability. They carried boarding teams, soldiers in combat armor, armed with plasma weapons and explosives. Jinwoo led the assault personally, the ship heading straight for one of the massive wrecks. Biodash ships, the aliens watching, could barely process what they were seeing. The humans were not just fighting from a distance. They were going inside the enemy ships. Jinwoo's team breached the hull of a Varix bioship and entered its organic interior. The corridors were alive, pulsing with blood or something like it. The air was thick with spores that would have been toxic to unprotected humans. But the combat suits had environmental seals, and the soldiers pushed forward. Plant the charges at the central organs, Jinwoo commanded over the team channel. We have 5 minutes before this thing realizes we are here and tries to seal us in. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this, running drills in simulated organic environments. It was still disgusting, wading through living corridors while the ship's immune system tried to attack them. But they had a mission. 4 minutes and 30 seconds later, they were back at their entry point. Jinwoo gave the signal, and they evacuated the bioship. 10 seconds after that, the charges detonated. The massive Rex vessel shuddered and died, its internal organs destroyed. Boarding Team 1, successful kill, Jinwoo reported. Moving to Target 2, across the battlefield, other boarding teams were having similar success. The Rex had never encountered an enemy that would willingly enter their ships. Their bioships were designed to consume and digest. Not to defend against internal attack, the battle raged for 19 hours. The human strategy was working, but the cost was terrible. Ships exploded. Soldiers died. The Vrex adapted slowly but steadily, learning to defend against human tactics. When it finally ended, the space around Kronos Gate was filled with debris. 3,000 Vrex bioships had been destroyed. The swarm had retreated, something the Council had never seen them do before. The gate was secure. The 5 worlds were safe, but 60% of the human fleet was gone. 8,000 soldiers had died. hundreds of alien crew members who had volunteered to fight alongside. Humanity would never go home. In the Council observation station, several delegates were physically sick. They had watched humans fight with a ferocity that seemed impossible. Soldiers had laughed as they charged into death. Commanders had ordered sacrifices without hesitation. The survivors were celebrating their victory, celebrating a battle where thousands had died. Thraxis sent a message directly to Earth's government. It contained only one question. What have we allied ourselves with? On the bridge of the damaged righteousness, Minho read casualty reports and felt the weight of every name. They had won, but victory felt heavy. Around him, his surviving crew worked quietly, already beginning repairs. There would be more battles. The war was far from over, but for now, 12 billion people on 5 worlds were safe. Children would wake up tomorrow. Families would stay together. Cities would continue to exist. That was what they had fought for. That was why the price had been worth paying. The hospital ship Mercy floated in orbit around one of the saved Council worlds. Inside, Dr. Guinesio had not slept in 72 hours. Her hands were steady as she worked on a Caldari soldier who had been caught in an explosion during the battle. The alien's physiology was different from humans, but trauma was trauma. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the patient. Save the life. We need more plasma for the Thraxian in Bay 3, a Lumina medical assistant called out. The gentle beings had been horrified by the battle, but they had not hesitated to help the wounded. Their natural empathy made them excellent healers. Even if the scale of injury overwhelmed their peaceful nature, Guan moved to the next patient. A human pilot who had managed to eject before his ship exploded. He had broken bones and internal bleeding, but he would live. She had pioneered new medical techniques during this crisis, combining human emergency medicine with alien healing technology. What the Council doctors saw as aggressive and almost violent interventions, Ji-Wan saw as necessary. Sometimes you had to cause a little pain to prevent death. Back on the Council station, Doyan found himself defending humanity before an emergency tribunal. The chamber was filled with angry delegates. For 3 days, they had been debating what to do about the humans. Some wanted to revoke Earth's membership. Others wanted to exile humanity from Council space entirely. The enormous screen showed footage from the battle on repeat. Human soldiers screaming war cries as they charged into combat, boarding teams laughing grimly as they set charges inside Vrex bioships. The suicide ships, crewed by volunteers, racing toward their targets with no intention of survival, Minho giving orders that sent thousands to their deaths. Jinwoo covered in alien blood, calmly reporting successful kills. "You fight like animals," Counselor Vexery said, his telepathic voice filled with distress. Every being in the chamber could feel his emotional pain. "You rejoice in slaughter. You celebrate death. We saved ourselves from the Vrex, but at what cost? We have become allies with monsters." Hannah stood beside Dojun, her diplomatic skills tested like never before. She had spent 2 years building friendships with these species. Now many of them looked at her with fear and disgust. "We do not rejoice in death," she said firmly. "We rejoice in survival." Those soldiers you saw laughing? They were not celebrating killing. They were celebrating being alive when they thought they would die. "You sent ships full of people to deliberately crash and explode," another delegate accused. "You murdered your own crews." "What kind of species does this?" "A species that understands sacrifice," Doyen replied. His voice was tired but steady. "Those crews volunteered. Every single person on those ships chose to be there. They knew they would die. They went anyway because they believed their deaths would save billions of others. That is not murder. That is the highest form of love." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that human methods were too brutal, too violent, too wrong. They showed medical reports of the wounded, describing injuries in graphic detail. They played audio of soldiers in pain, crying for medics. They presented psychological evaluations of survivors who were struggling with what they had seen and done. "War damages the soul," one representative said. "Your soldiers will carry these scars forever. Is this what you want for the galaxy? A civilization where everyone is traumatized by violence?" but other voices began to speak up. A Keldari military officer, one who had fought alongside humans at Kronos Gate, stood before the council. "I lost my arm in that battle," he said, showing where his limb had been replaced with a prosthetic. "I watched my ship get torn apart. I saw friends die, but I also saw 12 billion people saved. My children live on one of those worlds. They are alive because humans taught us how to fight." Then something unexpected happened. A young Kaldari child, no more than 8 years old by human standards, was brought before the tribunal. She was a refugee from one of the worlds the Vrex had consumed early in the invasion. The council had rescued her, but her entire family was dead. The child stood before the assembled delegates with tears running down her face. When she spoke, her voice was small, but clear. "My mama and papa are gone. The Vrex took them." The council tried to save them with shields and evacuation plans, but it was too late. "Everything I love is gone." She turned to look at Doyan and the other humans in the chamber. "But you stopped them. You killed the monsters that ate my world. I wish you had come sooner. I wish you could have saved my family. But you saved others. You saved worlds full of children who still have their mamas and papas. Thank you." The chamber fell completely silent. No one had expected this. The child was led away gently, and the delegates sat in uncomfortable contemplation. Admiral Taiyang, participating remotely from Earth, took the opportunity to present new intelligence. "While we debate the morality of our methods, I need you to see what we discovered during the battle. Our boarding teams recovered data from the Vrex bioships. They have been tracking council evacuation patterns for years. Images appeared on the screens showing Vrex movement patterns overlaid with council evacuation routes. The correlation was obvious and horrifying. The Vrex had been herding the council's refugee fleets, planning to consume entire populations at once when they were packed into transport ships and temporary colonies. Your peaceful methods were not saving people," Taiyang said bluntly. "You were gathering them for slaughter. The Vrex see your evacuation procedures as a convenience. You do the work of collecting the biomass for them. Our attack at Kronos Gate did not just stop one invasion. We disrupted their entire strategy for this sector." Thraxus absorbed this information with visible distress. His crystal body flickered through a dozen different colors, before settling on a deep blue that meant profound sadness mixed with understanding. "We thought we were being wise," he said quietly. "We thought violence was beneath us. But we were just being convenient prey." The tribunal recessed for the night. Delegates needed time to process everything they had learned. In the corridors outside the chamber, small groups formed. Some still argued that human methods were wrong. Others admitted reluctantly that those methods had saved billions of lives. That evening, Jinwoo addressed the families of fallen soldiers in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. He stood before rows of memorial markers, each one representing someone who had died at Kronos Gate. His voice was strong, but anyone could see the grief in his eyes. "We do not love war," he said to the assembled families and the watching galaxy. "We do not celebrate death. Every person we lost was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Their absence leaves holes in the universe that can never be filled." He paused, looking at the memorial markers. "But I will tell you what they died for. They died so that children on 5 worlds could wake up this morning. They died so that families could stay together. They died so that cities full of people who will never know their names can continue to exist. We became monsters so that others did not have to." The transmission reached every corner of council space. On 1,000 worlds, people watched and began to understand. The horror they felt was not really discussed. It was recognition of a terrible necessity. It was the uncomfortable realization that peace sometimes required guardians willing to do violent things in her hospital. Guan finally took a break. She stood at a window and looked out at the planet below. A world full of people who did not know how close they had come to extinction. A Lumina healer approached her quietly. "I have been reading about your medical history," the Lumina said. "You have wars in your past where medics had to perform surgery in terrible conditions, saving lives while battle raged around them. I thought it was barbaric when I first read it. Now, I understand. You learned to save lives in the worst possible circumstances because you had to." Quan nodded. Every human doctor learns the history of battlefield medicine. We hope we never need those skills. But we train for them anyway, because hope is not a strategy. The Lumina was quiet for a moment. My species has not had to deal with death on this scale in thousands of years. We have forgotten how to cope with it. You humans live with it constantly. You'll remember your dead. You honor their sacrifice. You keep going. How do you bear it? We bear it because we have to, Jiwan answered. And because we believe tomorrow can be better than today? Every life we save is a victory against death itself. That is worth carrying the weight. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kronos Gate. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Today they would vote on humanity's permanent status in the Council and decide the future of galactic defense. The chamber was more divided than it had ever been in 3,000 years of history. Eunice sat in the observation gallery with other human technical advisors. For the past 6 months, she had been traveling to Council worlds, teaching their engineers not just how to build weapons, but why they needed them. It had been challenging work. Many aliens still struggled with the entire concept of military technology. Deterrence, she had explained over and over. You build weapons not because you want to use them, but because having them stops others from attacking you. If everyone knows you can defend yourself, they will think twice before starting a fight. Some Council species had embraced this philosophy. The Keldari, who had lost so many worlds to the Vrex, were building their own defense fleet. The Thoraxians, with their advanced computer systems, were developing strategic defense networks. Even some of the more peaceful species had begun creating defensive capabilities, though they insisted on strictly non-lethal options. But others remained troubled. The Lumina had held massive peace rallies on their homeworld. Millions of their people protested what they called the militarization of the Council. They argued that by learning to fight, the Council was abandoning the values that had made them great. The vote was about to begin when an emergency signal interrupted the proceedings. Every screen in the chamber lit up with a priority message. An alien species called the Kaldrith Dominion had issued an ultimatum to 3 Council worlds. They were to surrender valuable mining resources or face annihilation. The Kaldrith were known pirates and raiders, but they had never been bold enough to directly threaten Council territory before. Thoraxis called for calm as the chamber erupted in worried voices. "This is exactly what we feared," one delegate shouted. "Learning to fight has made us targets. The galaxy sees us as warriors now," Minho said, standing from his position with the human delegation. "The galaxy now knows you can defend yourselves." The Kaldrith would not have sent that message 6 months ago. They are testing you. They want to see if the rumors about Kronos Gate are true. And what do we do? Another delegate asked. Do we give them what they want? Do we fight them? We are not ready for another war. Minho looked at Jinwoo, who nodded. The commander stood and addressed the Council with calm authority. You let me handle this. He walked to the communications station and opened a channel to the Kaldrith Dominion. The message was transmitted on all frequencies, public and unencrypted. Every species in the sector would hear it. This is Commander Jinwoo Han of the United Human Defense Force, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. The territory you have threatened is under our protection. Any act of aggression against Council worlds will be met with immediate and overwhelming military response. This is your only warning. Choose wisely. The chamber was completely silent. Some delegates looked horrified at the directness of the threat. Others looked relieved that someone had finally stood up to the Kaldrith. Everyone waited to see how the pirates would respond. The answer came within an hour. The Kaldrith withdrew their ultimatum completely. They requested a diplomatic meeting to discuss peaceful trade agreements instead. They did not apologize, but the message was clear. They had heard about Kronos Gate. They had no desire to test whether the humans were as dangerous as the stories said. The council chamber erupted again. But this time the voices were mixed. Some celebrated that conflict had been avoided. Others were disturbed that a simple threat had accomplished what years of diplomatic negotiation never could. Doyen stood to address the council one final time. He had been preparing this speech for weeks, knowing this moment would come. Honorable delegates, you invited humanity to join your alliance to save you from the Vrex. We did that. But what we are offering now is something more permanent. He gestured to Jinwoo and the other human military leaders. Humanity will be your shield. We will do the things you cannot bring yourselves to do. We will carry the weight of violence so you can maintain your peace. We will stand between your civilization and those who would harm it. But understand this, he continued, his voice growing more intense. If we become your warriors, you must remain our conscience. Do not let us forget what we fight for. Do not let us become the very thing we fight against. We need your wisdom, your compassion, your commitment to peace. We can teach you to fight, but you must teach us when to stop. Sumin added her own perspective. In human history, we have seen what happens when warriors forget why they fight. They become conquerors. They become tyrants. We do not want that. We need you to remind us that war is a tool to protect peace, not an end in itself. The chamber quieted as delegates considered this. It was Thraxus who finally spoke, his crystal body glowing with a complex mixture of colors that represented hope, fear, and determination all at once. The council was founded on principles of peace and cooperation, he said. For 3,000 years, we believed that violence was beneath civilized beings. The arrival of the Vrex forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Peace is a luxury that requires protection. He turned to face the human delegation directly. You humans terrify us. Your capacity for violence, your willingness to sacrifice, your comfort with death, all of it goes against everything we have built. But you also showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us courage. You showed us that loving something means being willing to defend it. The vote was called. This time, it was not close. By a significant majority, humanity was granted full council membership. More importantly, the council voted to establish the Galactic Defense Force, a permanent military organization that would protect all council territories. Multiple species volunteered to join, not all as combat forces, but as support, logistics, medical, and strategic roles. The Lumina, despite their protests and their commitment to peace, surprised everyone by volunteering an entire medical corps. We will not carry weapons, their representative said, but we will heal those who are wounded, protecting us. That is how we can contribute. After the session ended, a young human soldier named Hyun Nam stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. He had survived the boarding action at Kronos Gate, barely. The experience had given him nightmares that he was still learning to cope with, but he had also written poetry about it. Trying to process the horror and the heroism he had witnessed, a Lumina delegate approached him quietly. The being glowed with soft light, its form shifting gently in a way that communicated peaceful curiosity. I have read your poetry, the Lumina said. The one about your fallen comrades? You write about honor, sacrifice, and dreams of peace. You are warriors, but you are not mindless killers. Hyunwoo nodded, grateful that someone understood. Every human soldier I know fights for the day when fighting is no longer necessary. We do not love war. We love what war protects. Peace, family, the chance to build something better. If we ever start loving the fight itself, we have lost what makes us worth protecting. The Lumina's light shifted to a warm golden color. Then perhaps there is hope for us all. We can teach you compassion while you teach us courage. Together, we might create something neither of us could achieve alone. From orbit Earth gleamed in the darkness of space. It was a planet that had known 10,000 years of warfare. Humans had fought each other over every imaginable cause. They had made terrible mistakes and committed horrible atrocities. But they had also never stopped believing that tomorrow could be better than today. The Galactic Council had invited humanity to the stars, expecting explorers and traders. Instead, they got warriors who wrote poetry, soldiers who mourned their enemies, and fighters who dreamed of a day when their skills would no longer be needed. News of the Kronos Gate battle and the Cauldron incident spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of the Council suddenly knew about humans. Some saw them as dangerous savages. Others saw them as potential protectors. But everyone understood one simple fact. Council territory was no longer easy prey, Dozen minor conflicts ended peacefully when potential aggressors learned that the Council now had military protection. Pirates found other targets. Warlords reconsidered their expansion plans. The mere knowledge that someone was willing and able to fight back changed the calculations of those who relied on pacifist victims. The human military established training bases on 3 Council worlds. Volunteers from every species came to learn not just combat tactics, but the philosophy behind them. Jinwoo insisted that every soldier understand the ethics of warfare, the importance of proportional response, and the difference between defense and aggression. Hannah continued her diplomatic work, now with a new focus. She helped establish protocols for when military force was appropriate and when it was not. The Council created oversight committees, ethical review boards, and strict rules of engagement. They were determined to have a military that served peace, not the other way around. Minho retired from active fleet command and became an instructor, teaching alien officers how to coordinate complex fleet operations.